Hi, everyone. Welcome to session 3E, Equity in the Arts and Small Business Ecosystems. My name is Levia Love, and unless anybody else wants to be a moderator, it looks like I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm really excited to have everyone here. There are some faces that I know and some that I don't. So I'll just quickly introduce myself and then pass the mic. My name is Levia Love, and I am the owner-operator of Bling Brow Bar, which is a brow and body waxing studio here in Eureka, California, on Weout land, dedicated to servicing everybody. And by that, I mean I am extremely inclusive, and I'm the place that people go to when they maybe don't feel comfortable somewhere else. And so I will be speaking from those points today. And I'm really excited to pass the mic. So whoever feels like they want to jump in next, please feel free to.
I'll jump in because Levia and I work together with Black Humboldt. My name is Mo Harper Desir. I'm an arts activist and educator in Humboldt County. I work at Access Humboldt for my day job, and I'm the co-founder of Black Humboldt, where I was able to connect with Levia as our Black business liaison / hub member / just person that I love now. And I recently started an arts-based business as well in the last 2 years. So I'll talk from that large range of things, and I'll pass it on to someone else.
Okay, it's my turn. So my name is Alme Allen. I'm Karuk and Yurok. I'm an artist and I'm a carver. I always list carving because that was one of the ways that I stayed connected to the cultural arts within my community, and I try to stay true to that. Although I'm a multimedia artist, I work with practically anything that I can get my hands on. And if you kind of noted some of the things going on in the recent years, I've been painting some murals and doing some public installations of like seating arrangements that are based on our traditionally carved stools from our area. And part of my plight is like indigenizing spaces. So I could say I'm a small business owner, but really I'm an artist. I call myself Karuk Carver Studios, kind of a catchy thing. It's really it's a very formalized side hustle. I do contract and I do a lot of stuff that's very community based. So that's who I am. Day to day, the what makes the financial puzzle work is like where I'm at right now, United Indian Health Services. I'm a supervisor in the facilities department. That's what makes everything work. And then art and all of that is like the butter on top of the toast. Brittany's laughing already. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in. I'm Brittany Britton. I'm a Hoopa tribal member, and I am currently sitting in the preparation space for the Goudi'ni Native American Arts Gallery here on Humboldt State campus. I am the gallery director for this space and also for the Reese Bullen Gallery located down in the art department. I am also a semi-practicing artist. My studio has been pretty quiet for the past few years, where I've been focusing more on my curatorial practice. But this is the viewpoint that I'm coming from today as a curator for specifically our Native American art space here, with which I've hosted Alme here, and then I've also worked with Laura more recently at the Playhouse.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Laura Muñoz, and I'm a theater and dance maker. I am with the Arcata Playhouse and Playhouse Arts, where I am the special project coordinator and enlace comunitaria. So I'm a community organizer and art instigator, and happy to be here with y'all.
So it looks like Clara is advising Leslie on how to get in as the moderator right now. And so I'm going to give a few minutes for that to happen. Oh, hi. Everyone's rushing out of the boardroom. Get out now. Leslie, are you ready?
All right, we're going to share our experiences as artists and business owners. I'm assuming as it pertains to Humboldt County.
Perfect. Does anyone want to go first? Okay. Let's see here. I want to make sure that all of my everything is all synced up so that I can see everything still. My experience as a business owner here in Humboldt County has been one, a story of resiliency, and Leslie, your mic came on.
Yay. Thank you. I'm so sorry. I came to City Hall because I was having trouble at home, and now I'm having trouble here. It's so great. But thanks all for being here. And I don't need to interrupt. I really value all of your contributions to the community. And I know that as artists, there's a certain amount of joy and struggle. And then also as people who are people of color and Indigenous, just the struggle also for equity and the joy of culture and celebration. And so I'm just curious if you want to talk about your experiences within Humboldt County, within the region, and how that shaped your work and what you kind of hope to bring to the community, to your work, what you want and need from the community. That was a lot.
Yeah, totally. I can, again, go first. And then my story, like I say, is one of resiliency. It's one of struggle, but it is one of joy as well. For me, I, for the longest time, didn't find artistry inside of what I do. I wax bodies and I do cosmetology. I'm an aesthetics-driven cosmetologist who works in a brow and body waxing studio. So to find where my artistry was at inside of that, it actually took me being on the Black Humboldt podcast called Black Aesthetic, where they interviewed me, and I was like, I don't know where my artistry lies in this. And then we all kind of came to the conclusion that the artistry is the confidence that I give back to the community and to the people. And like, I plant seeds through my work that then bloom into a beautiful thing. And that's where I feel like my art lies. But also there's artistry in the work that I do in, you know, other very intricate ways. One of the things that I feel like has been a doozy for me in this community is I have been a thriving and viable business for over 3 years on my own solo. And when it came time to come out of shelter in place and it came time to start looking for a new location and really getting everything together, Humboldt County was there was a resistance I was running up against, and I know that I'm not the only minority business that was running up against this. And it was that my business looked too small, and that the companies or powers or property managers or owners or lenders all thought that I was at risk or a risk. And so it was really hard for me to get my business up and going again, knowing that this community at large loves me, that they invest in me, but that the banks and the property management and the owners would not invest in me. And I had to do something that I feel like not every BIPOC business owner would have the opportunity to do. And that was, I offered to pay my lease to my property manager 6 months in advance and in full. And so coming in today, I knew that when we talk about equity, my biggest thing as being the Black business liaison with Black Humboldt or being a business owner in Humboldt County is we need access to resources. We need access to the things that are going to help us be thriving businesses. It's going to be the things that take us from micro, like my business, to now I'm a mini business. So I just up leveled a little bit. And now I've got this big, beautiful space that I'm sitting in today where, you know, I'm very blessed to be here because I was able to flex like that and get the property manager to see that I'm worth investing in, that I would invest in myself. But there are still issues with banking. There are still issues with other property management companies out here. There are issues with, you know, getting products. And so when it comes to Humboldt County, like my thing is, how can we support the small businesses and make sure everyone gets seen and everyone gets support? And, you know, I already had said that I spoke in one of the sessions earlier today, and majority of our conversation was about the work that SBDC does here. And the Small Business Development Center helps a lot of people get moving and shaking. And so it's more of like, how do we collaborate with these systems that are already in place to build up the businesses that are already in the background running here, but how can we bring them to the forefront? And that's kind of where my mind is lying with the small business ecosystem of Humboldt County and how to make it equitable. Because not everyone is going to have the opportunity like I did to throw down a bunch of money that they have in savings. And so that's kind of like my thing. And I almost closed multiple times because I didn't have lenders, because I didn't have all of the other opportunities that maybe other demographics in Humboldt County have access to. And so I say all that to say, I am thriving. I am manifesting everything that I ever wanted in my little life. And that's because I've built a really, really great network of people that is like Layla Roberts, SBDC, City of Eureka, both Arcata and Eureka Chamber of Commerce's, Black Humboldt, Queer Humboldt, and I continue to just intertwine as much as I can with other community teammates to make sure that we not only we get our, like I'm building myself up, but in that process, I'm reaching back and making sure to pull other people up with me as much as I possibly can, because it's, you know, no use in being in a thriving space when you can't share it with others. And so that's what I do here in this community. And hopefully that explains some of whatever. And then if you have questions for me, like I'll put in my deets and you can get a hold of me.
I just want to. Thank you, Levia, for all of that. A lot of things inspired me to come right after you because, of course, I think there's probably a lot of commonalities in our experiences. but that idea of togetherness, so that the weaving together of our experiences to create possibilities and opportunities for us and for others who are coming after us. So yeah, and the visibility and making in a way, it's decentering the whiteness experience in the community for all the other colors that are in the community, and so that there is no center. I mean, one of the things as an artist, I'm a dance and theater maker, and one of the things now is to inhabit public spaces. What does it mean? A body of color is different, inhabits the space differently than a white body. So how do we inhabit those spaces, our own space, this home, our bodies, but also the common space, the public space, and how are we out there making art or just living, so that's I've been doing this for a while, but this is what my present experience is that of wanting to inhabit, of wanting to make visible, of wanting to center different experiences. Yeah, I'll just say that for now.
Yeah, I'll go next. I feel like a lot of what I do also comes from wanting to create things. And whether that takes many different shapes in my life, just in general, like through work or through my everyday life. Black Humboldt was birthed out of wanting to create safe spaces and spaces that reflected myself more clearly than I was finding in other places in Humboldt. And the theater-based education that I do, comes from me wanting to create safe, equitable spaces as someone who grew up in an inner city and surrounded by Black and brown folks, and then moving to predominantly white spaces, and that like culture shock that I felt that happened to me in primary school. And then again, when I moved to Humboldt, I like suffered from this culture shock of not seeing people, not only that looked like me, but also had the like ethnic background as me, being Afro-Caribbean and West Indian. There's just not a lot of folks with that background here. And then I would say the last 2 years have really morphed what art was for me. I grew up dancing in the theater, doing a lot of visual arts. Black room photography and video was actually my main source of creation before I moved to Humboldt County. And I feel like I spent so much time trying to get used to this community that I just stopped creating altogether. And then through a lot of connections, just things started popping up where I was, this past year alone, and it's so weird because it was like a virtual year, and everyone was finding ways to keep creating virtually. And so a lot of art forms that I love to express myself through, like poetry or dancing, took on this like virtual aspect, and I found myself really enjoying that. So last year, I collabed with places like the Playhouse. Rachel Sanders, who couldn't join us on this board, was putting together a really amazing BIPOC dance show, and it was all done virtually. And Black Humboldt does arts for Black and brown bodies, and we were able to, just extend our reach by holding these workshops virtually. And we were meeting people from Willow Creek. We were meeting people from Garberville. This one guy came to one of our mixers on his cell phone in his parking lot from Shelter Cove or something, one of these places that doesn't have good broadband. And he was able to like connect with us. And I thought that was something we hadn't seen before and we hadn't really thought of, because we were so used to creating space with bodies in a space you know, and that being the main you know, aspect of that get together is that, you know, we're sharing space together physically, where, you know, mentally and virtually has become something as equally as important. And I also think, going back to what Levia was saying about systems, I think COVID really showed us where our community is slacking in the support that BIPOC community members need. And I always say it's, you know, we're on Native land, and the least we can do is, you know, support the rebuilding of their cultures and their spaces and their ceremonies, et cetera. And, you know, we don't even have an infrastructure that supports small businesses, whether they're Indigenous or, you know, Black or POC in general. But, you know, people were too small for PPP loans, but not big enough for personal loans. And having a community that does love to support local, like Humboldt is so good at supporting local, but if you can't get past having a booth at a craft fair because no one wants to give you, you know, commercial space or whatever it may be, like, you know, that's discouraging. And we saw like an influx of really a lot of performative allyship last summer. And, you know, so it's like a lot of these BIPOC businesses, nonprofits, et cetera, like they got a boost of support that wasn't sustained. And so, you know, I want the community that's listening, if you were someone that donated to a BIPOC anything or shopped BIPOC in the last 2 years, but you find that you haven't done it lately, I want you to ask yourself why that is and how you can return to that, you know, like those actions. You know, we see a lot of big businesses here being supported out of sheer networking alone. It's like, you know, the product isn't what's driving people there. You know, it's the people and the footprint that they have in this community. And BIPOC business owners should be able to do the same and also be able to reach out and get support in a number of different ways, especially like systematically.
So just to kind of continue with what Mo was talking about, the part that she was talking about that strikes me the most is having space, having a place to do what we do. And a huge part of that equity piece for me is exactly that, is that having a place to be ourselves, to, you know, conduct our arts. But for Native people, our culture, the art, everything is kind of all wrapped into one language. And I just wanted to jump to this part because when Mo said that, that's what struck my heart, was that I find ourselves battling two things: time and space. And, you know, and I think one of the things that I want to eventually see happen is to make that more accessible for my people. And I've been telling people lately, you know, things like, hey, you know, when this happens, or if this happens, you know what my dream is? I've been telling people my dream is this huge space that we can do all of these things. And anyways, I just feel like if I keep saying it, that maybe someday it's going to come true, you know. And it's got me thinking about the nonprofit world, because my family and our group of people, we do a lot of community work. And I think, well, we were groomed up in this life way, in this culture, that's what we do. It's never about self. It's always about the collective. So the people that taught us, that's what we're about. We're not about an I or a me. We're about a we. At least that's what we're supposed to be about. And so part of what I like to try to counter is that with this new generation is that this is a situation. This is what we have to teach them. But everything in society is teaching them the other thing, you know? So I'm just kind of speaking freely about it. Circling back to my, myself as a practicing artist, it was a long time. It took me a long time to get onto this place where I'm very well set into a groove, a path, a clear direction, a lens that I can see where I want to go, and I have destination and purpose. And the reason it took me so long, well, number one, I'm a man. I was a boy, and boys just mature much slower than women. I've seen it happen over and over, generations now. But honestly, I struggled with school. After high school, Hoopa High, I moved out to the coast, and I didn't do so well. I was plenty smart. I just wasn't disciplined. I didn't come from enough structure to have that. And I learned that later, but it was after I dropped out of school and started working and so on and so forth. But eventually I circled back to, you know, something that pulled me in and made me find something that meant something, which isn't hard to do for Brittany and I's people. It's like we come from a culture has a lot of depth, and as an artist, you spend the rest of your life creating from that depth. That's the big plus. We know the cons, the traumas, you know, we'll always be dealing with those. So it took a while, and now I'm in this place where, you know, I see where I want to go with it. I see how I want to impact community. It's just like, and that's what this is good for. It's like, how can we get there? You know, include and support each other and whatnot. But how can we make it better for the next generation to maybe not struggle quite like, you know, maybe like what I was talking about, but you know, to find a place to be ourselves and be strong in our community and stand strong and be able to, you know, just sort of continue, you know, who we are as a people. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Britt.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that. Oh no, an echo. And what Mo was saying too about this, and Laura too, about this like creating space and embodying space. So like I'm suddenly in charge of these two gallery spaces. I came into the job June 2020, and I think that's kind of why my studio practice has kind of died off a bit, right? I'm focusing on curatorial practice that is helping create space for other people to be able to show their artwork. So during the pandemic, we went virtual. Goudi'ni wasn't doing much beyond, we did a presentation of past exhibitions on the fence outside the Arcata ballpark. And then I ran 2 virtual exhibitions at the Reese Bullen. I physically installed them though, and then I presented them virtually. I couldn't get away from that physicality that I felt like was needed with the art of being able to document it up physically in a gallery. But I've been really dreaming about just how much space, that space and like cachet that I have right now. Even for all that, like I'm in this weird middle ground of I'm in academia, I have a budget, but it's like not a nonprofit, right? A lot of it has lots of earmarks on it. So I'm still figuring out these boundaries that I have to work within to be able to do the things that I want to do. I kind of thought I was going to have more freedom, but I'm finding like there's a lot more boundaries than I was expecting. I recently got interviewed like maybe an hour ago for the exhibition that's out here. So everyone come up to the Goudi'ni Native American Arts Gallery. It's the exhibition celebrating Brian Tripp, and it's up through November 20th. So, and they had asked me, like, oh, so what's the importance of having a Native American arts gallery space? And I'm just like, this is kind of a self-evident question, right? I felt like it was just like a no-duh question. But I found it like really difficult to articulate of like, why is it important to have these spaces for Native Americans? like, I don't know how to articulate it because it is so at the forefront of everything that I do that we need our space, right? Like, especially on the lands that we come from. I'm on my I'm on my neighbor's land right now, right? Like, I'm on Wiat land, but I'm rambling into this space of, I also have the privilege to be able to share space with other people of color, right? And to be able to give the mic, right, in the Reese Bullen space, and then kind of figuring out what these like outer limits of what an Indigenous arts gallery is too. So I'm really excited to dream and to like make this future kind of plans happen. So I'll pass it off.
One of the things that I want to touch back into in regard to like being in a weird space of not having like necessarily art as my focus is that inside of Bling Brow Bar, I carry something called Collaboration Mart. And it's a space where I dedicate a chunk of my unit up here to artists in the community. So if you have artists who want to show off maybe like sellable pieces during the holiday, or that maybe won't get seen by the same demographic of people, because my eyes are my community eyes that come up here are going to be different than somebody who'd be down, you know, in Old Town or down in another location. I have this space dedicated to that. That's always here. And one of the hard parts is getting it curated. So I would love to collaborate and get pieces from artists who are BIPOC identified in my space, and then be able to then bring them abundance through capital, because they would be selling their art in my shop. So just putting that out there.
Yeah, I like.
You muted, Alme.
What, you guys can't read lips? No. So I like what you're saying, because I think you know, natives, sometimes we're okay just being in our own community, and that's all we need. But you know, people like my wife's uncle Brian, who's got the show up at Humboldt right now, have this crossover impact where they've transcended into other cultures, other realms, other countries, international even for Mr. Tripp, you know, and so the impacts that can come from that, you know, but for a large portion of us, you know, we're okay just being in our community, maybe making a couple bucks with our selling our wares and whatnot. But then once you start to be able to, you know, be seen in other communities, things start to change. And that's why I jumped in here, because that's the little piece that I've seen change for myself in the last decade, was doing, you know, public murals. And they're like, oh, that guy. Oh, okay. And now it's like, okay, so now the people are looking at the work a little bit differently. And the work ends up always coming back sort of to the land for me of late. It could be anything, but it's this land thing. We just can't get over it. And so you almost, in my perspective, it's not always this way, but it's hard to be a native artist and not a native activist. They're like kind of the same thing. And sometimes I scrutinize my work like, is this a little too hard of a message? But I always think like, I'm talking about the land and setting something straight and making people think and have conversations, then it's the right thing. And what Brittany said about she's on her neighbor's land, that's an indigenous philosophy that probably goes worldwide, that we always acknowledge whose land that we're on. And so for us to be doing it as a larger society today, I just think that just comes, you know, it probably comes from the land, if you really want to know what I really feel about it. And so I just know in like Karuk language, we don't go to another place up and down the river in our area without doing prayers at that place and asking the spirit of that land right there that it be okay that we're there. So that's how we operate. And so it is nice that there are these changes though some of them subtle and some of them like, well, for the CSU system to have to acknowledge that the indigenous people's land that they're upon. I think those are really kind of landmark. But when Brittany said that, as a Hoopa person on Wiyot land, it made me think of that, you know, that's how we are. It's encoded in our DNA. It's so spirit of the land right here. And then you ask it that it be okay that you're here. So on to the next.
Yeah, I want to jump in because you said we have this conversation a lot at Black Humboldt because folks tend to think that we're a social justice group when we're really just like an events group kind of, and like promotion, we provide promotionals. But we often have that conversation that like just existing as free Black people is a political statement. So therefore we're often making political statements merely being ourselves. And, you know, storytelling is something that Indigenous folks, Black folks, African descendants have always used to create and maintain their lineage, right? And now we do it every day in our art, in our businesses, in the lives we lead, you know, at work. And it comes off as political because people don't want to have to experience the trauma that we speak about, right? And a lot of the time it causes white guilt, or, you know, decentering whiteness can be triggering for white-bodied folks or just people accustomed to white supremacy culture, right? So every time we have output, even if it is, you know, a method of joy for us, it sometimes comes off as political, which can be challenging. You know, that people can feel threatened by your existence, right? Or the truth that you tell because it's quote unquote deemed political. And then I also want to touch on, you talk about just staying in your community and the comfort that brings. I'm familiar with that, you know, only befriending people that look like me, or only, you know, gathering in groups of people that share my culture because it's rich and it brings me joy, especially as I navigate predominantly white spaces otherwise. But I think, like you said, it's really something special when it can pour over in a like well-supported manner, right? That we do have these allies that support us in ways that make us feel good, much like our own community does. Or when we meet new people or experience new spaces, when you're met with like warmth and compassion and appreciation for that culture that you're bringing or that story that you're telling, it really creates a sense of nurturing that isn't available otherwise. And it's really important, I think, especially in Humboldt County, which is predominantly white, that when we are pouring ourselves outside of our communities, we're met with the same cushion and support and warmth and love that we get when we are pouring within our communities. Because it's really easy to pour where you're comfortable, but to pour yourself into new spaces, into new groups of people, it's vulnerable, and vulnerability is scary, especially for people navigating trauma and generational trauma, et cetera.
Very well said. Leslie, are you going to jump in?
Oh, there is a question. I'm happy to let the conversation continue because it's so rich. And then there's a question that Solomon asked in the chat that I'll just throw into the mix and continue. Is just, what does success look like when imagining a future of equity in the arts, in the small business ecosystem, and I'll say and beyond? What are specific markers for, you know, the future, and then what actions would be needed to get to that future, political or otherwise?
I'd love to get in here and get a little spicy if it's possible. For me, the things that I hear most often are access to capital and access to space. And really what that looks like is that's for everyone. That's not even just for business owners. That's like everyone is having struggles. BIPOC people are having struggles inside of capital and property. And so for me, I would love to see, I don't even know, like, see, I'm like tempted on house price. I want to get, I got to sit up straight. Hold on. For me, I would love to see some kind of systems in place that look like the properties that are open and available for renting that haven't been leased in a, you know, a time frame, have, instead of trying to incentivize owners to fill their properties when there's no consequence, instead seeing fines being put in place for not renting them. Because what it is we have businesses, BIPOC in particular, who are wanting to rent these units and want to put their businesses into a storefront and want to be a retail commerce business, bringing something back into our economic community. But then we have the roadblock of property owners and managers who don't want to rent to them. And we have the roadblock of banks that don't want to lend to them. And so until we get all these things flowing in a way that gets everybody moving and gets these spaces filled, we aren't going to see the growth that we really want to see. We have tons of BIPOC businesses here that are amazing, that if they had an opportunity to just set up somewhere, like Mo said, not just a holiday fair, that would thrive in this community. But they need the space, but they need the capital, but they need the community support. And until we have those things in place from everybody else who could do that, if you have the ability to kick down a door and make a possibility or an opportunity for somebody, please do that. Please do that. It's as simple as giving someone a shot. And that's where I see that we would have something really tangible happening. That the second question was, what are the markers? Tomorrow, today, yesterday, these things could have been happening. And this last summer, we did have a lot of people really willing to do a lot for BIPOC businesses. And then all of a sudden it got real quiet. So I'm just saying, check it. If you see your people around you who have things that they have access to that they could be using to help someone else, check them, tell them, hey, seems pretty weird that you're sitting on a property, or seems pretty weird that you could do this thing, you haven't. I'll stop there because that's pretty hot already on its own. I'm gonna just keep it at warm.
I love that so much, Levia. That's exactly right, and it's resources and yeah, the space and that's all. And I want to go maybe further. Is like, how do we envision then giving the land back? What would it look like if the land was given back? Then you know, the different systems, the different ways of organizing, different you know. I wanna encourage us all to imagine what that would be like. And we are establishing precedent. You know, Potawatomi was given back, and Tolawat, sorry, and we are seeing we're seeing change. It's possible. And when you're saying, Levia, what are the markers? Yesterday and today and tomorrow? Yes, exactly. It's like we're not even. I don't think we need to think, you know, it's like, oh, this is so unrealistic and it's so complicated and it's so hard to do. Can we just imagine that? And if it's all of our desires to imagine and start one foot and then the other towards that, that's what I'm curious about and what I would like to see. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. I need all of our collective imagination to make this possible and to see, okay, how do we move forward? And the thing is that we're moving forward together. So we're talking about an inclusivity. So yeah, we're talking about the people of color. What are the experiences? How do we struggle? But it's like our success is everybody's success. So we're moving forward together. I'm reading this book by Heather McBee. Is that right, her name? The Sum of Us, which is breaking the idea, bringing that idea of the zero sum, in which some people win and some people lose, breaking that open, and it's like, it's the sum of us. It is all of us. So yeah, give the land back. How do we do that?
I think also Levia said people with resources share them, and people with spaces like help to open the door. And I think that starts a lot by recognizing who's kind of always doing something and like stepping back. Like in Humboldt, I feel like it's really easy to be like a small town artist and everyone's like, oh, we love this artist. So they put this artist everywhere, right? And it's like, if that person is always taking the space, how are we going to then get someone else in that space? And then also the idea of, if you are someone with space, have you done the work to make that space inviting and safe for a BIPOC person to even want to come and, you know, create within? So that's really important, I think. You know, taking a step back and kind of looking at, like, if you have a theater, is your theater inviting to BIPOC folk? If, you know, Eureka Street Fair art, are we making sure that at least 50% of participants are maybe BIPOC or, you know, interracial or queer, or, you know, just something that's not cis hetero male white? And also, I think that we have an infrastructure that we should be seeing more grant programming that's aimed towards BIPOC business owners, or, you know, filling the gap of GEDs received, or like, you know what I mean? Like all these pieces that we say we need in order to do well in a professional sense, in a, you know, in a business sector, or being an entrepreneur, you know, all these skills that you need. How do we get those skills to the people that are lacking them? You know, how do we talked about the barriers, we know they exist, but like, how do we, you know, what do we create to help get over those barriers? And I think our county could really come together and create some really strong programs that support BIPOC-owned businesses, like I said, educational incentives, also getting more Black and brown people in the marijuana industry, especially while Black and brown bodies are sitting in prison cells over marijuana and white bodies are commercializing and getting rich off of it. We often forget that art makes up so much of Humboldt County, whether you're in it or not. You know, that industry supports our community. And so ways that we can decriminalize Black and brown bodies in that industry while it commercializes, I think it's also something we can do on a systematic level.
I don't know if this is a slight tangent, but there's something in what you were saying that it's like I have to shift my viewpoint around to be like, look, somebody else looking at me in this space of like, I've come in as an administrator, arts administrator, I have budget. My whole goal is to spend as much of my money as possible locally. I'm trying not to buy from large corporations. Sometimes I have to, but the majority of the time it's like, can I buy at the art center, which is women owned and people color owned, right? Like, can I buy things at these other local businesses? That means that this thousands of dollars that the university has given me stays here, and that I pay artists, right? Like, I'm making sure that artists get paid and that it's equitable between the Reese, Bullen, and Goudi'ni for a while. And part of this is that research that I think other people have to do as well, of like, do you even know if you've only shown white artists up until now, or that you have been equitable in the past? Maybe you haven't. Like, I'm coming in and inheriting like 50 years of history with the Reese, Bullen and 10 here at Goudi'ni. Our budgets haven't been spread across both galleries in the same way. I definitely am realizing like the majority of the artists that we were showing at Reese Bullen has been white dudes, right? And the people who have been approaching me in this last year since I've been in this have all been majority white women, actually, asking for exhibitions. So those are the people who feel comfortable asking. We need to empower ourselves to also like ask for that space and demand that space as artists of color. So on that flip side, like I want to be able to hear from other artists of color in this space that I'm inhabiting. So those are the strategies I'm employing as a person of color, as an Indigenous person who is in this arts administrator role. And I think those are like minor strategies that people could be doing in the like powerful spaces that they have.
So it's about resources, plain and simple. And it's about a system that was never set up for us. It was set up for somebody else. We know that. And so, but for some reason, when we make the rest of the world, the other faction of our community aware of this, it makes them uncomfortable. And then we're known as radical. So it's all just, it's just all terms, man. And so we've been fighting it for a long, long time. We know this. But just 2 days ago, Riverside, California, we've got a teacher down there dancing around like an Indian and all of this. And it's been going on since 2012 or 2015. And it's nothing new, it just, here it is. This is a system, and it is a system. But, at the education level, I talked a little bit about how it didn't quite work out for me. Well, things worked out. I was fortunate enough to get through it all. But I think about all of those kids, those young people of color that are struggling, and how at that level, even though the grading system, it brings all of this negativity to their lives. The whole system is only working out for the people that have resources for a proper education, a solid foundation. And, to me, when I talk about resources, it always goes, back to the land. And it's like, you'll never get over it. And I look at people that have prospered in Humboldt County, and we want to talk about equity. How did those families that are well-to-do here, how did they get a leg up? It started a long time ago. And those people, and it was when they took over the land and then the resources, and you have some people that have prospered for like 6-7 generations. All I want for my kids is to be on a playing field that's somewhat level, to where they don't have to go to school and deal with what we're dealing with in California right now. Is the change going to come tomorrow? Is it going to be the next day or the next day? So I'm not too concerned about making some guy in a suit in an office somewhere that's all cozy feel uncomfortable. We've been feeling displaced and uncomfortable for 170 years. I'm just sorry. So if that's what it's about, well, that's what it is about.
Mic drop. Lessons over. Right there.
On the reel, we have I think we have like 1 minute left. Thank you all. Alme, thank you for closing us out because it's real. Thank everyone who's been here. Thank everyone who's listened. Thank you, Leslie, for bringing us all together. Thank you to everyone who put together this event. And hopefully we brought some ideas and information to you. And if anybody wants any of the contact information, I think it's attainable via the website where you registered. And dude, like, just if you have a way to make something happen, make it happen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.